Hey guys, we are the Let's Talk 20s podcast. I am your host, Tanner.
I'm one of the co-hosts, Connor.
And I'm your other co-host, GT.
Guys, this podcast is centered around common themes that people in their 20s may be going through, whether it's anxiety, depression, other mental health things, relationships, and so much more. It's all about things that we're all going through together. We may think we're going through it individually, but the point of this podcast is bringing light to things that we're all going through together.
We can't wait for you guys to hear about our thoughts with this. We upload weekly episodes every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. sharp, so please tune into that if you'd like to hear the episodes. We also all come together every week for a different topic, and we each share our perspective on that 3 times a week, so please look forward to those as well.
And you guys can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts at Let's Talk 20s Podcast. We look forward to seeing you guys soon.
And with that being said, please enjoy this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Let's Talk 20s podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in, listening, watching to yet another episode. I'm with my two co-hosts as usual, GT and Connor. For this week, I want to talk about the topic, which is titled, What Do You Want in Your Future? And I think this is an interesting topic because obviously the three of us, off camera, on camera, and even in person now, we've all kind of talked about what our plan is in the next few years, what we would like to do, especially with us all being involved in relationships with significant others, and how that can kind of affect and alter what our path is and everything. I think it's going to be a personal but a great episode, and I think a lot of the common themes that we're talking about that are broader picture can be applicable to anyone who listens, regardless of their age. But what do you guys think?
Connor, would you like to take the lead on this one?
No, yeah, I think it's hard to figure out exactly what you want in your future. I have a new perspective on it where I used to waiting for things to get better and I wasn't living in the moment as much. So I'm trying to focus, being more present and living in the moment like we've talked about a lot on the podcast. But I still want a lot of things in my future. I still have big picture goals, personal goals that I want to meet. So it's an interesting balance to find, definitely.
I think just a mix, but no, definitely got things in the works, got things brewing, got the ideas, coming along. So I'm excited to see how it goes and how it plays out.
Well, fantastic. Connor, would you start us off with the first question of this episode?
Absolutely. Figured for what do we want in our future, we should talk about, our goals, and we should talk about, just specific objectives that we maybe have. So kick us off, gentlemen. For you guys specifically, let's start with a personal question. Do you guys have more big picture personal goals for the future, or is it smaller, more focused objectives to accomplish in the near future? So, for example, like Tanner, maybe your smaller, more focused objective is to get through the semester with a good grade, for example, but your big picture goal is to ultimately get your doctorate with this, right? So something like that. Do you have more of those big picture ones, or is it the smaller ones? And if so, how has that changed for you over the past few years?
That's a great question to start it off. And to make mine not too long of an answer, I'll say right now, I have the big pillars of my life in terms of my relationship, my career, and stuff like that obviously are bigger picture, right? And we've talked about this before, where you kind of have to think about the future long term in the back of your mind in terms of make sure you're going in the right direction to at least accomplish these future big goals you're trying to do. However, the majority of my thought process now is more on the smaller picture goals, whereas in the past I was always thinking about the larger, bigger picture personal goals. And I've talked about this in a past episode where that kind of focus on the future so much really caused me to be distracted in the present and not appreciate everything in the moment. So as I've come to be more appreciative of the moment, live in the moment, be more present in scenarios, I've come to not necessarily think of the large picture, but focus on the smaller picture, like you said, Connor. Instead of thinking about next semester, like some of my classmates already are, kind of stressed out about next semester in the fall because supposedly it's more difficult than this one. I'm just focused on now. I'm focused on this week and this next exam that I got going because what can I do to control the fall? Nothing. So with coming to be more in the present, I've switched to more of those smaller, maybe more tangible goals now.
I like that. I would say, for me personally, I have those big goals in the future, but at the same time, I have those smaller. I kind of have a mixture of both. That's just what works for me. is to have these big ones to where, okay, like it's something really big, a big accomplishment, big milestone or something that I have later on in life, but I also have little things that, I can achieve a little quicker, but it's also something where I enjoy the process of the little things. And I really think that's helps me a lot with staying in the moment because I really enjoy the little things every day instead of, oh, if I don't get these big goals immediately, then what am I doing? My life isn't what it should be, and my life isn't valuable or the best that it should be when actually it's the little things that I find so much joy and so much passion and love for when just those little things that keep building up. Because we've always talked about that, like the little baby steps, right? Instead of making those big jumps. I think it's just a mixture of both because the milestones will come, the big achievements will come, but also have those little ones that also little goals. So that way you win battles. That way you win the war. And that way game of life turns into a W instead of, wow, he didn't really do much with his life because he lost battles and then he lost the war. So that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, we're very similar. Pretty much the same answer, just worded differently for sure. We're both that way in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound
3 for
redundant.
3.
I would say short and sweet. I feel like I'm very similar to you guys. I think another way that I could look at it is maybe I've changed my definition of what the big picture goals are, and maybe not even changed the definition. I've kind of changed the definition of what the time frame is, because when people think of big picture goals and stuff, I feel like a lot of this stuff, I want to get married one day and you're 18, right? And it's like, oh, that's probably 10 years down the line or something like that. Oh, I want to have a nice house, or I want to have children or something like that, right? All amazing, worthwhile goals, or I want to work in this place in 15 years. Those are so, I mean, 10 to 15 years is so far away. 10 to 15 years ago, I was like worried about like what cookie I was going to eat next in my room playing video games. Like I was not worried about all this. And 15 years from now, I'll probably be worried about my kids' future rather than my own in a way. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard for me. I've kind of shifted what the time frame of those is. So it's like my smaller, more focused objectives have more to do with my week to week.
I think that's smart to have the definitions because as you get older, you learn more, and I think it gets more detailed out instead of when we're little. Oh, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be a rapper. I want to be a producer. I think it's smart. So I love how you added that in there. But
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
we talk about all these big time goals and little ones, and sometimes I see it through travel ball that I see almost all the time, which is unfortunate. But it's a question that comes to my mind and that I'm very curious about with you guys is, do you see something in your future like that you really want in the future because for you that you really want, or is it for someone else through you?
I like this question because it feels like it's speaking to me, because that's how all of my goals used to be designed and all my future goals used to be designed. And I have a question later that kind of gets into this, but there's like a vision for a successful life that a lot of people implant in us when we're younger. And you kind of just go along with it because you're just trying to live as a kid and a teenager and just trying to make it to the next day. So I think it's interesting that you brought this up, because I think unintentionally you kind of live for what other people's definitions of success are for a long time until you learn to challenge like that status quo, until you learn to design goals that are for yourself. So I think if you had asked me maybe 5 years ago, I would have said it was stuff that other people wanted for me. And I still think that that's part of it, because we're in relationships and you have to balance like what your partner wants in the future just as much as what you want in the future. So there's a balance for sure with friends and family and all that. But I would say it's more of a mix than it used to be for me. I have more things that I want to do, more things that other people in my life want to do, but it's more geared towards what I want to do, which feels more satisfying.
Yeah, same way. We've talked about how Connor and I have been more so of people pleasers, and that's kind of been our personality type. And it's great to a degree, but then when it starts leaking into your personal life and you kind of blend your own personal aspirations, and then you maybe think, oh shit, am I truly doing this for myself, or is it a combination of that? And then also people have that expectation of me to be that as well. So now I really got to kick it into gear. And as I've gotten older, with especially even really within the last few years, I came to realize that at some point that has to come to a close, because when you do start your own true life with kids, with a significant other, and you get married and everything, that is the start of you truly trying to live your own chapter. And so I've come to realize that within the last few years, and I really try to make more of an effort to make sure that the goals I'm setting for myself are specifically for me, and now, like Connor mentioned, for me and Cameron. And that's where I'm at now. So I'm with Connor in this one. I hate to be redundant again, but it's one of those things where for me, I realized that you got to cut that sooner than later, or else as you get older, it'll be harder and harder to separate and differentiate that. But what about you, GT?
I would say, I know like mine's a little different, but kind of similar. Where I think it's like Connor when he's first started off. We all have that same picture that we all want to make our mom proud. We all want to make our dad proud. We want to make those people around his family proud. We want to, something that they have, an influence on. I think it's something that it's very present. But for me, I think as I got older, it's more geared towards stuff I want to accomplish and stuff like how do I want to be remembered. And it's just, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on, but it's something where a lot of my goals are towards me, but they have other people involved in them. But I'm not going to be up here saying, oh, it's all about me. It's not at all, because it's not. I don't think that's how life should be played, because if you're only doing it just for your own satisfaction and your own happiness, then you're not living life the true way. You're not living life that Jesus wanted you to live. That, however, with religion, I'm sure it's not always all about me. I think that you find more happiness when you do have some other people's stuff, but majority is yours. So finding that perfect balance for each person is very important. So, but just to round it off, for me, mostly myself, but a good amount of it is close ones like my girlfriend. There's so many things I want to do for her because I love her and I know that she's the one. I think about it, and that's why you just got to put a plan into action no matter how long it takes. And, it might not be how you want to go about it, but future is the future, and we can't always predict the future, but damn it, I'm going to do my best to make it by a deadline that I want to make it by. So, but yeah, that's how I would answer that question. So I could go on about it for a while, but we got plenty more to talk about in this amazing episode with these two beautiful other people in this.
Beautiful, man.
We interrupt this podcast for a quick word from our sponsors. Hey guys, something that we talk about in the podcast several times, and it's a theme that goes on throughout the podcast, is mental health and how important therapy services can be for you, especially in your 20s, as we're trying to figure this thing out called life. So that's why I would like to thank our sponsor for this podcast, BetterHelp. If you guys do not know who BetterHelp is, they are an online therapy service, the world's largest, with over 20,000 licensed therapists that are conveniently placed for you. All you do is fill out a questionnaire, and they try to match you with a therapist based on your wants and needs. And if you happen to not like that therapist, you can absolutely switch to as many therapists as you want to find a perfect one for you at no additional charge. You guys have a 24/7 text line with the BetterHelp service, a weekly video chat with your therapist, and much more included in this. Rather than in-person therapy, which some people may feel a little intimidated by, this therapy on the go concept I think is brilliant, especially for people in their 20s who love the convenience and would rather have therapy at their own expense rather than having to go to a therapist in person. Guys, I think this is a great solution for a lot of people who listen to the podcast. I know that there are several people that I know who have used this online therapy service with BetterHelp, and it is fantastic. So if you guys are interested, visit BetterHelp, HELP.com/Let's Talk 20s podcast to receive 10% off your guys' first month of therapy. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/Let's Talk 20s. Guys, I appreciate you listening to the sponsor, and let's get back to the podcast. Fantastic responses. I think we all are same in the aspect that we obviously want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and the people that we care about. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that in an aspect. And I want to switch gears, and we kind of indirectly answer this question, but I want to ask you too if there is something that you want in your future that you maybe did not want a few years ago. Let me repeat that since my voice cracked. What is something that you want in your future that you did not want a few years ago? I'm going to have to say it again. What is something you want in your future that you did not want a few years ago? And do you think that this will change again?
A few years ago, I always wanted to leave Georgia. I always wanted to get out of here. I always wanted to not be here. And I thought it was because I wanted to meet a bunch of new people. I wanted to go explore a bunch of places, and I wanted to try all this new stuff. And I think I did it because when I was younger, I would get really overwhelmed with my family and my friends, and I would just kind of feel like I'm not making good decisions. So I always kind of envisioned that I was going to go move somewhere and be on my own and do my own thing, and I didn't need anybody, and I was going to be self-sufficient. And so I did it, and I honestly hated it. I didn't like it. I liked being self-sufficient. I liked being independent, and I liked having my own space. But I miss my friends and my family desperately. I never, and again, it's so silly, looking back on it. Of course I did. That's where the majority of my happy memories come from, of course. But I was just in my head thinking that this is what I wanted to do. This is where I'm going to go. I'm going to move here, and then I'm going to move to another place, and I'm going to keep moving and trying all this stuff and be like an interesting person. And then I've changed my perspective on that. I would absolutely visit a bunch of places with somebody, with Shay. That's the goal. And maybe even move to a couple different places, maybe one, maybe two that are somewhat close to here. And I could see that maybe changing again, depending on if there's an opportunity or a place that just is amazing. It's like, oh, we should go there. But I don't see it ever going back to when I was as a kid, because I experienced what I thought I wanted and I didn't want it. And sometimes you can think you know what you want in the future, and then when you actually get there, you're like, I didn't actually want it.
Before I met my girl, I would say I was a wild child. I think it was a lot of okay, I'm 18, I'm 19. I'm so sick and tired of being at the house, because I think me personally, while I was very privileged growing up, so don't take this by no means me complaining. The only thing is my parents would not let me do as much as other people. So I never got to do the spring break in high school. I never got to go do all these other things that all my other friends were doing. They're like, well, we're keeping you out of trouble. And I'm like, well, I'm not learning a whole lot that all these other people are doing. And I wanted to just let loose. So that's why freshman year happened. Everyone that listens to this podcast knows what happened. And then I came home and I'd hit Tanner up, but it was mostly because I wanted to see Tanner. It was never because I just want to go to a state school. If I want to go to a state school, trust me, I didn't have to drive 2-3 hours to go all the way to Auburn if I wanted to do that. But because I wanted to come see Tanner, and you can ask Tanner. I was wild. Was I not a wild child?
You could say that. We've had a few break. We've had a few things.
Yeah, we don't need but and it's something that I didn't even think I was gonna meet someone like my girlfriend till I was 30. I was like, well, we just gonna be living our 20s up, a bunch of mistakes, lots of learning, but lo and behold, what in the world? So, but I'm very happy. So, very happy.
So you're saying Addison or having a serious significant other is something that you did not foresee a few years ago, but you have now? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. It's just both of them. So having a significant other like this serious, and also being with someone like her, just because she's so awesome. So, yeah, man.
Nice. That's a great answer. Yeah, both of you. Obviously, knowing you over the last 10 years, that it's funny to look back on how we all were 10 years ago and what we wanted in our life, and how everything in a way has led up to this, and how we're all maybe doing things that 10 years ago we did not expect that we would be doing, or maybe in a place in life where we maybe weren't initially expecting, which not in a negative or positive way, just different. I think something that I want in my future that I did not want a few years ago. That's a tough question. I've always wanted to do something like this where I've always wanted to help people, and I think even with the career I'm going into, obviously it's serving people and trying to help them and get their quality of life improved. But something like this where I didn't know that I would be doing a podcast, obviously, but something where I wanted to just put something out there. If people want to listen to it or watch it, then fine. But I always just wanted to put something out there that I felt like was another form or another outlet for me to talk about myself, talk about my problems, but then also to maybe, help my friends out, because the whole reason why I started this is because I would have relatively similar conversations with several different people and realize that we're all going through the same shit, but we just don't want to admit it. So I think this is something that I shouldn't say I did not want, but something I did not expect to have, but now that I do. And let's see, what was the other part?
I can agree to that.
Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. I think that's my answer. Something I want to ask you two gentlemen, we've kind of talked about kind of how we either focus on the smaller, more focused objectives to accomplish our future. I want to ask you about your past, and are you living in the quote unquote future that your younger self wished or wanted? And what aspects yet, and in what aspects no?
Say yes and no. I think it's definitely a dual bladed sword. I have some amazing friends that I longed for when I was younger. So I didn't really have to where before high school, I didn't have true friends.
Mm,
And that's something that I was scared of growing up is like, I don't want to have people just leave and are not my friends anymore because I would have that growing up just because, things happen and to where you're not able to bring your friends with you on everything that you want to bring them with. I truly thought I was going to be playing pro ball, but hey, it is what it is. I mean, that's life. Sometimes it just doesn't go the way that you visioned it, but maybe that's because it has something bigger for you, maybe something that you'd be better at, even if you find it hard to
yeah,
believe. So, but I
yeah.
would say for the most part, yes. But some aspects that were big things that I would say no. So if I'm being 100% honest.
Oh yeah. Why would I want you to lie, man? We're getting to the personal stuff. You got to be honest. I love it. I love it.
Oh, I mean, man, the thing I cared about the most, I wanted to be famous when I was younger. So that's not gonna happen. I don't want that to happen anymore.
Whoa. Excuse you. You're listening to
I
the
was
fifth
like,
most listened podcast in the world.
that's
I'm
what I say. What the
I'm
hell,
gonna
bro?
cover my face up and use a voice modulator because I do not want people to know
Hey,
who
he's
I
gonna
am.
start. Hey guys, this is Connor
Like
Lawson.
that.
No, I'm gonna do the voice
Background.
modulator, but like high pitch. Hey guys, it's Connor. To be honest, I don't really think that I knew what I wanted when I was younger. I knew I wanted to do cool things. I knew I wanted to meet like those big metrics and stuff, like get married, have kids and stuff, and go travel to some cool places. But I never, when I was younger, knew what I wanted to do with my life. I went through a bunch of different, like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. Oh, I want to be a doctor, like all that stuff. But I never really settled on anything. I always just wanted to be in a place where I was around people that cared about me, I guess, was always the thing that I cared about. So the general concepts of what I cared about, this is kind of a hard question for me because I don't think I was very like, I don't know, I didn't really push for this kind of stuff when I was younger. I was better at living in the moment when I was a kid than I became as an adult. And I lost that because I thought I was messed up, that I didn't have future goals. So I started trying to force goals on myself that I thought I had to have. So in a way, I kind of am living the way I always wanted to as a kid, where I'm just happy around people and I have a job and I'm supporting myself and I have the best girl in the world. So yeah, in a way I am living exactly what I wanted when I was a kid. As I got older, I think what I used to want has definitely changed, like I said earlier, though. So for me, more so, yes, actually.
Oh, fantastic. Man, my younger Tanner would be beyond disappointed in current me. I mean, I was going to be the president of the United States, a professional soccer player, and a veterinarian all at the same time, and I'm none of
Wow.
those. And a story I don't think I've told either of you this. When I lived in quickly before when I lived in the DC area, this is when I really wanted to be a president. Like I had a mat that my parents put in front of where I sat at the kitchen table with all the presidents and the faces in their order. So like I know all the presidents in order. I was a big history buff, and like this whole thing, right? So when I was younger, I actually wrote a letter to George Bush, inviting him to dinner, and I was going to cook him fettuccine alfredo. And several months passed. My dad helped me with this letter and make sure it's professional. And Tanner, this is how you write a letter. And dear Mr. President, feel like 6 months pass, and I get an envelope from the White House, and he wrote back. You know, it's like his White House correspondent or whatever, but with his signature and a bunch of personal portraits he had with. I think his wife's name is Barbara Bush, and his dogs and everything, and it was really cool. But I wanted to be president, bro. I want to be president, a pro soccer player, and veterinarian, and I haven't achieved any of those things, so I'm a complete failure. But no, I'm just joking.
He getting there though.
Hey,
Hey Connor, can you imagine Tanner as president?
None of us could be president.
Can you imagine?
None of us could be president.
Besides me wanting to be three things simultaneously as a kid, I always had a big heart. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to make sure that I was happy. And like you two, I also wanted to make sure that I was in love. And I think those are all things that a lot of kids aspire to have when they are older and everything. And it's funny how sometimes things maybe don't work out exactly the way that you wanted it to or anything like that, but maybe you met those core values that you wanted as a kid to be in love with someone, to be happy and help others, and those kind of core values that you'll always feel like you need to have as part of you. That's part of your identity. And so I think I'd be proud of myself in those aspects. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Nice.
So talk about all these things, right? All these goals, right? What are the next steps, guys, to get to what you want in the future?
I'll send off with tangible steps. It's to adjust my daily, weekly schedule so that I meet my yearly goals. That's all that there is to it. Is if I'm falling off track for not hitting some of my resolutions, which I've hit a good bit of them, honestly, I gotta say, I need to just adjust my schedule and keep focusing on making good habits so that I can meet these smaller goals so that eventually I will achieve these bigger goals. So it's to get more organized and more disciplined and to stick to a schedule, especially with school coming up. That's my next steps.
All right. I like that.
What about you, GT?
So for me, it's kind of like what Connor said. I think that's also what works for me is defining those goals and being more specific and not being as broad, because I feel like if it's broad, then I'm not giving myself a clear path and an easier way to navigate through things. So it's making sure that it's more detailed out so that way I understand it more. So that way that's just what works for me. And to where I'm able to break down those goals and how to get there and just experiment. Sometimes you got to experiment and see if it works, and whatever works for you, just keep going, just keep grinding it out, keep doing what you got to do and get there by all means, however you got to get there. So
I like that, man. I like both of your answers. I'm going to go a different route. And this isn't for me to say that I think what I'm doing right now is perfect and I am perfect right now, but I'll say I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing now. And I feel like because I'm saying that because as I've mentioned so many times, and you guys know me on a personal level, so I don't even have to say it again, is how hard I can be on myself and the unrealistic expectations I have for myself. So within the last 2 months, I've been really hard on myself more than I have been in years past, and just with stress of school and just trying to balance everything. And I've really been trying to work on my ability to be okay on a day-to-day basis and like feel that I did enough for that day. Not focus on tomorrow, not focus on next week that I do, and if I am, which I'm pretty much on the right track, then I'm just going to keep doing that. And I think that's how I'll just achieve the things I want to in my future, is just take it day by day and just keep doing what I'm doing and just keep chugging along. I think that's the best I can do, or else I personally go down the rabbit hole of what am I doing wrong, and let's list everything down I'm doing wrong or that I need to improve, and yada yada. So that is my response. Gentlemen, is there any closing thoughts on this episode? What do you want in your future?
Keep going. Even though it might not be right there, keep going. Don't stop. Don't ever stop, because as soon as you stop, that next day, that next thing is when you're going to accomplish it. If that's your mindset, that you just keep going for the next one, the next one, the next one, you'll get there. But if you have a set date, set time, if it doesn't happen like this, then it's not going to happen. You're playing yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good advice, man. I would say when you set goals for what you want in your future, make them malleable and make them flexible so that you have room for life to happen with your future, because you don't want to be so strict and rigid with exactly what's going to happen that you miss out on great things actually happening in front of you.
Fantastic advice. The only thing I will add to that is what I've harped on once or twice in this episode is that obviously you need to set your goals for your future and keep your future self in mind, but it is very easy to be distracted and not live in the moment. And as Connor mentioned, 10, 15 years, it seems like a far while away. But however, if you constantly focus on your future and not in the present, those 15 years will go by very quickly. So enjoy where you're at now, whether you're in the spot you want to be or maybe not even in the spot you want to be. Enjoy the process of trying to get to where you want to be and where you want to go, but live in the present. I think that's very important, even for your future self. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys tuning in to yet another episode of the Let's Talk 20s podcast. By the way, we are now on Apple Podcasts as well. So we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So that's another platform for you guys to be able to listen or watch us. And with that being said, I appreciate you guys tuning in and have a great rest of your week. And as always, guys, until the next one.
Signing off.